Elvis is American. Elvis is excess. Excessive sex, excessive drugs, excessive commercialization, excessive generosity, excessive music, excessive violence, excessive clothes, excessive sideburns. Elvis is excess. Elvis is American. Elvis is a perplexing mix of joy and sorrow, triumph and tragedy, an archetype of America. For some, he is like a modern-day Messiah. Susan Jones, while shopping in New Mexico, found this icon done in the style of religious iconography. For me, his life is a prophetic foretelling of American history. As Elvis goes, so will America. His story has all the classical markings of myth: the humble beginnings, the rise to fame, the serving the country, the time in the wilderness, the triumphant return, the untimely death, and resurrection sightings. His humble beginnings. Elvis Aaron Presley was born on January 8, 1935 in Tupelo, Mississippi. His twin brother Jesse was stillborn, and Elvis grew up an only child. His parents were poor. He spent his early childhood in a shack near the cotton fields, where he heard the black sharecroppers singing, and on the radio his parents played bluegrass music. Eventually his family moved to Memphis. At 18, he went to Sun Studio and paid $4 to make a record for his mother. Sam Phillips, the owner of the studio, found what he was looking for: a white guy who could sound like the black artists he was recording. In 1954, he recorded "That's All Right, Mama," a rhythm and blues tune. On the flip side was a rocking version of the bluegrass standard "Blue Moon of Kentucky." Also on the Memphis scene at the time was bluesman B.B. King, who recalls, "I liked Elvis a lot. I saw him as a fellow Mississippian, and I was impressed by his sincerity. I thought he was honorable when he came to play the Goodwill Review, a yearly benefit in our hometown for needy black kids. When Elvis appeared, he was already a big, big star. Remember, this was the 50s, and for a young white boy to show up at an all-black function took guts. I believe he was showing his roots. After the show, he made a point of posing for pictures with me, treating me like royalty. He'd tell people I was one of his influences." By 1956, Elvis had his first top 40 hit, the bluesy Heartbreak Hotel, followed that same year by a cover of the rhythm and blues song by Etta James, "Hound Dog." He was hot. He was dangerous. Here was the musical integration paralleling the integration that was sweeping the South and challenging all of America. In December of 55, the Montgomery Bus Boycott started and lasted over a year. During that year, Elvis had 11 top 40 singles. He was dangerous. After his first two appearances on the Ed Sullivan Show, they decided to invite him back, but this time they would only show him from the waist up. All the vice that had been projected on black America was then projected upon Elvis. Excessive music, excessive sexuality. Despite his popularity, his handlers decided he needed a serious makeover. He was drafted in 1958, and instead of trying to get him a deferment, which they probably could have, his managers decided to play up the all-American soldier boy. couple months before he went into the Army, he spent all that time in the studio ensuring that there would be enough hits while he was in the Army. But this was the beginning of his long trip into the wilderness. He had made 4 films before he went into the Army, and King Creole, he even got some credit for beginning to know how to act. But after his release from the Army, he made 24 movies in 8 years. This may seem like a lot, but it was easy to do since they were all the same movie. Young man from the wrong side of the track struggles to make it. By virtue of his ability to sing and win fistfights, he gets the girl. His movies were pure escapism. Escape from the social change that he helped create. Like Moses, he was wandering in the desert. Like Noah, he was adrift. Like Odysseus, shipwrecked on a Hollywood set. Elvis was hidden in plain sight, became irrelevant to the changes in America. In August 1963, when Martin Luther King was making his I Have a Dream speech, Elvis was starring in It Happened at the World's Fair. When Kennedy was assassinated, he was starring in Fun in Acapulco, singing Bossa Nova Baby. When LBJ, in 1964, when LBJ was escalating the war in Vietnam after the supposed Gulf of Tonkin incident, Elvis was starring in Viva Las Vegas. In 1967, during the Summer of Love, Elvis was starring in Clam Bake. But in December 1968, his comeback special was on TV. This was his triumphant artistic return. He looked dangerous again in his black leather suit, and he sang in the round with members of his old band. There was a few schlocky scenes of paying homage to the old movies, but he also sang a medley of gospel tunes with interpretive dance. And he ended with a song called I Can Dream, attempting to be socially conscious for the first time in his career. He sang, "We're trapped in a world that's troubled with pain, but as long as a man has the strength to dream, he can redeem his soul and fly." His social consciousness continued with his first top 10 single in 6 years. On a cold and gray Chicago morning, a poor little baby child is born in the ghetto. And his mama cried. He continues, "People, don't you understand? The child needs a helping hand, or he'll grow to be an angry young man someday. Take a look at you and me. Are we too blind to see? Do we simply turn our heads and look the other way?" His interests in the problems of the world takes a bizarre twist when he visits the White House and asks Richard Nixon to be a special drug enforcement agent. It's an interesting picture. If you haven't seen it, look it up on the web. But this resurgence gets sidetracked. Elvis finds a new home in Las Vegas. And if Hollywood was banal, Las Vegas was bananas, as excessive as the peanut butter and banana sandwiches that Elvis ate, and apparently ate too many of. The rhinestone jumpsuits became bigger and bigger. While he bought the hysteria about illegal drugs, he became addicted to prescription drugs. This led to a heart attack in 1977 at the age of 42. He was gone, but not forgotten. People were seeing him everywhere, and this took away some of my Christian faith. Up until then, I was absolutely sure that Jesus could have had to have been resurrected in the body because the Bible reported over 500 witnesses. That many people couldn't possibly see someone that was dead. On the Elvis sighting bulletin board, it reports 587 sightings since it opened in 2001. And it's hard to tell which ones are serious and which ones are intended as jokes. There is an Elvis is Alive museum in Wright City, Missouri. A CBS poll in 2002 said that 7% of Americans believe that Elvis is alive. Interestingly, those under the age of 30, the group least likely to be Elvis fans, are more likely than any other age group to believe that Elvis Presley may not really be dead. At 11% of these young Americans say that the king might live on. So as the reality of Elvis's death is starting to sink into his contemporaries, the young are increasingly believing the myth. Why is Elvis kept alive? Because we in America want to believe in our dreams. Our consumerist society wants to believe that we can be excessive and not die young. Consumerism. On eBay a couple days ago, there was 47,398 items related to Elvis. His automobile of choice was the gas-guzzling Cadillac, which he often gave away to friends and strangers. And we have outdone him with our SUVs that make those Cadillacs look small. 10% of Americans have made the pilgrimage to Graceland, where they can see his guitar-shaped swimming pool. The fascination I have with Elvis is that simultaneously he is the American dream and the American train wreck. He is the contradiction we all live. How many of us have wanted to shoot out our TV? Elvis did. But then he went out and bought another. I remember once Gail and I performed at a nursing home. It got to be about 20 years ago, and one of the ladies came up almost breathless and told Gail, "Your husband reminds me of a young Elvis." And sadly, with my similar eating hats, I think I look a little bit more like the old Elvis now. Elvis earned a lot of money, but he had a lot swindled from him, and he also gave a lot away. Elvis the man got lost in Elvis the myth. The band U2 sings a song, "Elvis ate America before America ate him." Whoever Elvis was as a human being is lost. But that myth lives on. This is important to UUs because he is a mythic figure, an archetype of America. And we live, even us UUs who pride ourselves on rational, we live these myths. These myths have a power of their own. Rudolph Bultmann, a Christian theologian of the 20th century, said that the search for the historical Jesus was futile. All we have are the proclamations, the kerygma about Jesus. Bultmann argued that the proclamation, "He is risen," had the strength to renew lives apart from the historic reality which is ultimately unknown to us. The story itself changed history. The cathedrals of Europe rose on the proclamation, "He is risen." The myth of the latter half of the 20th century America seems to be live fast, die young. This myth has consumed many lives. Hank Williams, James Dean, Marilyn Monroe, JFK, MLK, RFK, Jimi Hendrix, Jim Morrison, Mama Cass, Janis Joplin, Marvin Gaye, John Lennon, Kurt Cobain, and Dale Earnhardt are all disciples of this myth, all dead before the age of 50. But Elvis was the Messiah of this myth. He lived the American dream and discovered it was the American nightmare. What happens? What happens to us when we get everything we want? Money, sex, fame, power, intoxicants. Any one of these can kill a person. Elvis had them all. If America lives the myth of Elvis, we too will die from excess consumption. And if India and China realize the American dream, the world will die. Elvis forces us to ask, what do we want? Is it the mansion? Is it the entourage, the spangled clothes, the fame, the violence, the power, political power? Is it an escape from all our worries? What drives us? What causes us to pursue risky behaviors? Why do we sacrifice ourselves to a myth that kills us? We work too hard, we eat too much, we drink too much, we do extreme sports, we drive too fast, we push and hurry, our blood pressure rises. What do we do to center ourselves? Only an American could invent power yoga. Taking Hindu meditation and turning it into an aerobic exercise. We need to find a way to stop, to get off the fast track before we crash into the wall. Instead of accumulating wealth, to learn to share wealth. Public parks are shared spaces that eliminate the need for a huge yard. Being part of this fellowship allows you to partake in large dinner parties without having a mansion and a dining hall. A public library can cut down on the number of books that you need to buy. And fame. Instead of striving to be known, we should strive to know those around us. A few friends and family are more important than a legion of fans. Contrary to one of the album titles, 50 million Elvis fans were wrong. Fans put you on a pedestal and expect you to perform like a god. Friends and family allow us to be human. Before taking pills, legal or otherwise, to lower our blood pressure, we should consider what changes we could make to our lifestyle that would reduce our stress. Elvis is alive. He lives in all of us, whether we like it or not. Whenever we strive for temporary pleasures, we miss living in the here and now. Let us find life in eternal things, like beauty, like love, like the peace that passes all understanding. We do not need to live fast to live well. In fact, we live better if we take time to savor life. A long conversation with a friend is more satisfying than the applause of a crowd. A sip of wine enhances life more than a fifth of rot gut. Chew your food. Life is not an eating contest. Love intensely. Seek quality rather than quantity. Sing for the joy of singing, even if no one hears. Live for the sake of living. Death will come soon enough, so there's no need to hurry. Live each precious moment. The stars in the night sky are more magnificent than all the lights of Las Vegas. And they are free. Live freely. Live well.